Dave. Good afternoon, David. Thanks for joining us. I know I emailed you probably back in January, February, and I said I invited you on. From that, I was solo, and now I found Jerry. So Jerry's helped me out
All right.
with the show. So this is, I believe, episode number 8. Jerry, are we on this? Is this episode number 8?
Oh,
That
wow.
sounds good to me.
All right, so
Congrats.
episode number 8, and of the sports consigliares, just let you know, David, you're on with Jimmy and Jerry. So
Okay.
I found you, I guess probably maybe 25, 30 years ago. You wrote a book about Seton Hall, about the 4 players. I think that's what kind of intrigued me. And then the magic of the internet, I found you online. But I thought you had an interesting story, just your start from freshman year of basketball to where you are now. And I talked to Jerry about it, and he said, "Let's get him on." So
All right.
it's, and I also heard, I guess, probably on Biggie's Rewind.
Oh, what I did. What a
I
mess that
was
was.
doing some research for the show, so I know that you had the 2 managers on. But you just talk a little bit about you trying out for, was it Randolph, New Jersey?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Randolph, New Jersey. I know the football team was good back then. I think they out executed everybody, and it might not have been that
No,
big,
that,
but
yeah.
but they were pretty good. But just tell us about your start, your sports career, and we'll probably take you to where you are now, which is an
Oh,
interesting story. The floor is yours. So as they
yeah.
say.
I was, like so many young kids, I love shooting baskets outside. I learned how to dribble, learned how to play, but I was small as could be, and tried out for the freshman team, scared out of my mind. And my best friend, who ended up being an All-American at Fordham, and eventually the last cut of the Phoenix Suns, the coach had told me inbounding the ball, Tony should cut to the basket. He flared out. I passed to where he was supposed to be. Coach yelled at me. As a shy kid, I said, "Well, I'm sick the next day. I'm not going back to practice," and get yelled at. And a few weeks later, my friend Tony McIntosh said, "There's a thing called a manager. I don't know what they do, but I think you get to be with us all the time."
Yeah,
I
yeah,
said, "Okay."
yeah.
So I talked to Mr. Bauer, who was the Mr. DeLivo at Randolph High School, and they said, "Yeah, be a manager." And I got to play basketball every day and be with my friends. So I
Yeah.
was happy.
Well,
And
I guess you parlayed that, and then Jerry's a big Georgetown fan, so I guess we parlayed that. You
I,
went up to, you contacted Jim Boeheim's assistant coach, Bernie Fine,
Bernie Fine, yeah.
and then you ended up there at Syracuse. So
Yeah.
Jerry's a big Georgetown fan. I know you probably
Uh,
were up front and center during those times. So just talk a little bit about Syracuse, and then I'll let Jerry chime in. I don't want to hog up all the time here. Just talk a little bit how you
oh,
got
yeah.
to Syracuse and those teams back then dealing with Jim
It
Boeheim.
was a different time. There was no internet. And phone. I didn't know, calling a coach. So I wrote Bernie a letter my senior year of high school, and he wrote back. I still have the letter. It's in my scrapbook. And Bernie said, "Come to Manley Fieldhouse, to the office the day I got to campus. My parents dropped me off. I went to Manley. Bernie said, it talked to me for a few minutes and said, I don't even ever think he said I was in. He said, come to practice, and short hallway. And I'm there looking at Eric Sanford, Leo Routon's Red Bruin, these people I had just watched on television in when they won the NIT. And I was just floored. Like, I'm there with them on my second or third day of college. How is this possible? And so from there, my first 2 years, I busted my butt to show I was interested, and every practice, everything I could do. And my last 2 years, I was the head manager and got to travel and be a part of Syracuse basketball, which back then, my junior year would have been 83, 84, senior year 84, 85. So that was the start of the Big East becoming what it was. 85 were the 3 teams in the Final Four, 33,000 people in the Carrier Dome. Arch rivals with Georgetown, cast the characters everywhere. For us, it was the era of Pearl Washington, who passed away, Raphael Addison, Wendell Alexis, Ronnie Cycli. My first 2 years read Eric and Leo. And right before that was the Danny Shays era, that what preceded the Louie and Bowie show. So it was the beginning of this behemoth that became the Big East. It was just awesome to be a part of it.
Now, David, how was your? I mean, it's a great story. I have to, I'm a born and raised in Jersey City, so I have to give out Raphael Addison and from Snyder High School the shout out. Instant O. I believe he had a few 10-day contracts for the New Jersey Nets.
No, he played a lot of years in the NBA and overseas.
Yep.
He was with the Nets for a while.
Yeah. I believe that started with a 10-day contract, if I'm not mistaken, and he parlayed.
Yeah, it may have. When he came back from overseas, he joined the Nets.
But I was going to ask you, how was being around? I mean, listen, as a Georgetown fan, we despised him, but Jim Boeheim is one of the biggest icons in college basketball history. So how is it being around him on a daily basis?
The thing that's really interesting about sports that people don't quite grasp is when you talk about this word fame. What is fame? Fame is our perception of people. The reality is when you're with people every day, you don't see them as famous, right? So like the guys, Pearl was a god, but to us, he was our friend. Like we were friends. Like he'd just come over to the apartment, you sit and watch games. You didn't think of it that way. Coach Boeheim was Coach Boeheim. Like what you saw of him, that's who he was. He cared about us. At the same time, he let us be grown-ups. But we were together every single day when people didn't see it. It's fun to come to a game, but you didn't see the 5 days of practice and getting taped and films and the laughter and the challenges that you all have as people. But it was like you're in this bubble within a bubble almost. But it was amazing, to realize you're at the year that Pearl just took over Madison Square Garden in the Big East tournament his freshman year. And you're sitting there and we're all just watching this. Even the players are like, good Lord, we're in this. This is like the coolest thing. And it was fun.
Absolutely.
No, it must have been an awesome experience. And like you said, though, Syracuse was coming really into the Big East was coming into its own then. And, you talk about characters after character on, from each of the prominent schools within that division. So, and you had the front row seat. So, that's really amazing.
So fortunate. We talked about this before that with Coach Boeheim, that I was able to get a Big East internship after my senior year. The reason I got it was because I met Dave Gavitt and Mike Tranzisi. I met them because Coach Boeheim, when we were doing tickets, we were in the morning session or the afternoon session of the Big East tournament. Coach Boeheim inadvertently gave me the evening tickets, and I didn't realize that. So when we put them in the envelope, the Syracuse family and parents and friends could not get in to our games, so they walkie-talkie up or by phone, Syracuse has a problem. I didn't know better. I had to go fix it. So I go to the guy who's in charge of the Big East Conference, and that's how I met Mr. Gavitt.
Yeah.
And I got to be an intern at the Big East, and that was just like unbelievable on so many levels. I spent a lot of my time over at Providence College, had no money. So I was 1 year older than the guys there. That was the Billy Donovan, Rick Pitino era.
Okay, sure.
And then I got lucky that I wanted to go into sports information, but as my internship wound down, there weren't a lot of jobs open. So I got a job in the city in New York City in sports PR with a wonderful man named Ira Silverman. And one day, my old boss at the Big East, Linda Bruno, who went on to become the commissioner of the Atlantic 10 as one of these first female leaders in college sports. And Linda called and said, "What are you doing this afternoon?" And I said, "Well, I guess going back to New Jersey." "Why?" "No, you have to go to South Orange." I said, "Well, how am I going to get to South Orange?" "Well, figure it out." "Well, what do I have to go to South Orange for?" "You have an interview with Larry at Seton Hall." And I was like, "Oh my God." Larry Keating was the athletic director. "Linda, what do I say?" And she basically said, "Don't talk. I got you the job."
So,
And so for 4 years, I had the time of my life at Seton Hall.
yeah. Well, and then I found you. I opened it up. I found you with the book. You wrote the book, I guess, about the hitman and the kid who batted ninth. And to be honest with you, David, I didn't read all of it. I read most of it, but I remember that team was very special. You had John Valentin, Craig Biggio, I believe, is in the Hall of Fame now. Mo Vaughn, as we know in this area, played for the Mets, played for the Boston Red Sox, and Martise Robinson, who probably was the most productive out of all of them at that time, but didn't really have the professional career as the other three. So what? And you wrote the book, I guess, when these players were established. You talk a little bit about your motivation, why you wrote the book, and then just talk a little bit about the team, because in the book you do say about all the teams that put people in the Major League Baseball, and you have your Oklahoma State, your Arizona State, your Stanfords, your Miamis, and then there's Seton Hall. So with those three players, and the fourth player, I guess his last name is Morton, Kevin Morton. I guess he went online. Just talk a little bit about that time of the baseball team, Shepard, and just the information about the book.
Well, before we get to the baseball part, the thing that I look back, and unfortunately Larry passed away, but what Larry created at Seton Hall was a small Catholic school in the late 80s that was historically drawing from Newark, from Essex County. It was not the school it was today.
Yeah, it was a commuter
school, right?
Yeah,
and all of a sudden, Larry hires Ed Kelly, the soccer coach. Seton Hall goes from literally being one of the worst men's Division I college soccer programs in the history of the NCAA to number 7 in the country in 1987. We then had the basketball team that year PJ was basically PJ Carlesimo was impeached by the student senate. They wanted him fired, and Larry said no. The women's basketball program got better. John Moon had built a track team that had Olympians on it. And then Mike Shepard had this baseball program that was playing in the snow that nobody really knew about unless you were a diehard, college baseball fan. And so obviously Seton Hall goes to the NCAA tournament in men's basketball in 88, the run to the Final Four, and one of the great, most under talked about moments in Seton Hall history was when Brent Musburger came to campus to do a preview. And he said in the preview, from picturesque South Orange, New Jersey, Seton Hall. Picturesque was not a word associated with Seton Hall. That moment, I believe, played a role in changing the face of the school. And then obviously the Final Four. But the baseball team in 87, I didn't know what I was doing. I was a young sports information guy. I was with the women's basketball team and with baseball through the end of basketball. So the baseball team had already started, having gone south to play Miami and I believe North Carolina. So then once I started with them, would have been mid-March most likely, when we started playing those freezing cold 40-degree day where I still get the chills running through me. And all of a sudden, I'm a part of this thing that these guys were ridiculous. It was like a video game baseball back when we had Pong. So it would have been the entry level baseball where we were beating teams 30-5. And it was nuts. And as the year kind of went on, Martise, who hit 529 with 90 RBIs, 20 or something home runs, a billion stolen bases. When you watch college baseball today and you see the player of the year hit 420, and you're like, Martise was so much better than them. And here was a guy who could do a full split on the stretch to first base. The catcher was Craig Biggio. The line that we all laughed at every game was, back in the day, the catcher ran down the first base line to back up the throw on a ground ball in the infield. Craig would beat the runner to first every time. We just laugh at it. Mo comes in as a freshman and he's hitting houses in right field with his home runs. Then John Valentin was a nothing. He could scoop every ball, but he hit like 230. But we eventually that year made the NCAA tournament, which was difficult for a Northeast team because they had just ended the Northeast Regional, which guaranteed a Northeast team in the NCAA tournament. So we had to make it. We won the Big East tournament. We go down to Huntsville, Alabama, and we lost to Auburn that had Frank Thomas and some stud pitchers. But if Mo hit a long fly ball that was caught at the center field fence, it would have been a grand slam. We would have won. We would have gotten an off day, and our lack of pitching would not have been there. So that was that team. And through it all, I always said, my God, there's a story here. And the story ended up being that Craig is obviously in the Hall of Fame. Mo goes on to be the American League MVP and one of the, original high-priced free agent guys. Val goes and plays for 10 years in the major leagues. Martise didn't make it. He eventually made it as a front office guy with the Blue Jays and the Cardinals. What we don't talk about was the center fielder was Dana Brown, who's now the general manager of the Astros. Kevin Morton pitched for the Red Sox. This was one baseball team. So the tie was what they had with Mike Shepard Sr. Shep was the old school Vince Lombardi militant coach. But he taught them things. He taught them this bracelet that we all have, that never lose your hustle. He taught us that. So how the guys took what Shep taught them to the major leagues, and then interestingly enough, how the three guys who made it to the big leagues, how working with kids with cancer ended up being a uniting bond that they all three had that they never realized. So that was the book. It's called The Hitman and the Kid Who Batted Ninth. I think it's like, after all these years, it's like probably like 4 million on the bestseller list. But the good news is you buy one and it jumps like 1 million. So pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, David, you talk about so you look at, you just highlighted, your time at Seton Hall, which, being a lifelong New Jersey resident, growing up here, it was always of the philosophy, if you will. If you're a good high school baseball player, go south. And I think you look at that roster, and what that team accomplished being in the Northeast, schools in Miami don't play in, rough, brutal marches. They were like, oh, if you're a pitcher, go south. And you talk about, it's Seton Hall, that team, that baseball team, that's something. The book, I started looking at the book. I didn't get through the whole thing, but that's something you really should be a documentary. I don't know if you're you're working on that. But
Yeah.
it's a great story. It really is a great story. And again, I have to do this to tweak Jimmy a little. Second Jersey City guy we're talking about, Johnny Valentin, pride of St. Anthony's.
Yeah.
Could have been a good basketball player as well. Was a good basketball player. I don't want to take anything away from John, but again, it's a great story for like you said, and now that leads into my next question. Is it must have been really awesome to see the school go from here to here, because now I remember, and Jimmy could add to this, the Final Four and the championship appearance, losing to Michigan. I mean, growing up, I was a little younger, obviously, then, as we all were, but it was like, where is Seton Hall? Where is, where is the school? And then just to take off. I remember as a kid, my first impression of Seton Hall was, I don't want to use the term low budget, but a low budget practice, a video about Seton Hall basketball practice. And I'll never forget, it always seemed that the episode would end with PJ on the court with Nick Katsikis shooting threes. And it was a thing, it was on the MSG network, and they were trying to highlight, every school in the Big East. And then bang, overnight to go for what it was. I mean, it had to be a really remarkable rise and really probably, help your career immensely. Just start to finish.
Just to piggyback on Jerry's thing too, David. I actually applied. I graduated high school in 19. I actually applied, and applications went up 25%. So therefore, I did not get into Seton Hall. I did get in as a transfer.
Oh, you were the last one out.
But I mean, that also brought a lot of, like Jerry said, a lot of exposure. But not to steal Jerry's thunder, but but so I mean, after that '98 run, it definitely it put the school on the map.
It did, but isn't that what college sports does? And really, there's so many different lessons that come out of it. That Seton Hall at that time, that are still appropriate today. And you look at people like PJ, who taught all of us, whether he meant to do it or not, he has a unique ability to remember names. And everybody that comes across PJ will always say wonderful things about him. So now PJ probably was able to save his career by being nice to people, because no one wanted to fire the nicest person there was. So what a great lesson that he got the extra year to go to the NCAA tournament. Well, now you can't fire the guy who goes to the NCAA tournament the next year to the Final Four. And then his life takes off. Our lives took off. My life changed. As a 25-year-old kid, I'm in the media hotel at the Final Four with my boss, John Paquette, who is still leads communications for the Big East. John was with the team. There were no cell phones. If you wanted to get to a player, you had to call me. And I'm talking to the biggest names in sports and then calling John, and he's telling me what to do. So the confidence that I gained that I could do this is really appropriate. The hard work that it takes, right? Do people realize that Craig Biggio had to roll out the tarp in the rain if it was going to rain at Seton Hall? No. Is that like, look at the players today? It's all given to them. Those guys practice sliding in the snow. If it got to 55 degrees, they thought it was like Miami, right? The soccer team would fix divots in the outfield where the team played, but nobody complained. It was just what it was. So a lot of the lessons from that year remain. For not that year, but that period remain.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And, again, you talk about, I think, what is it, like the first sign they say, like when you're really getting older, is when you can look at your past with such fondness. And, like talking to you now, like, Jimmy and I are around the same age. So this brings, good memory, brings back good memories for us. And I'm sure it brings back, good memories for you, talking about this.
Well, it's funny that we just lost Mike Coco.
Yep.
Coco was
he was a staple in Essex County.
Yeah, he was a a manager of the team, of the baseball team. And back then, he was also the pitching coach. And he was an assistant manager / assistant coach. He had the van, just a gregarious, incredible human being. And what had occurred back then is the team said to me, why does no one come to our games? We're good. And I said, guys, you got to help me. Promote your program, promote yourselves. And so they went and did it. So they created Coco's Corner. They created the Hitmen. A guy named John Brogan was a pitcher. He came up with the Hitmen off the Don Mattingly poster of years ago, where he dressed Craig, Martise, and Mo in gangster uniforms. He had like water pistols, and he created a flyer. And they posted them all over campus. That was the Hitmen. Coco's Corner became a thing. And so at the wake, they had some videos playing, and guys, a whole bunch of guys came back and to honor Coco and with his family. And there's one image of the Big East tournament that year where the graphic is up of the lineup and the batting averages. And it was hilarious because it would have said like 460, 422, 398, 529, 377. And you go all the way down. And it was comical how good they were. But you have a guy like Coco who was revered, and now Seton Hall is going to rename the bullpen Coco's Corner forever.
Yeah, and then you made it when you can be named by one name with Coco. Everybody knew Coco.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
how many people at Seton Hall in the community, when he passed away, it was just this outpouring, and you're at the wake and no one's calling him Mike. Coco.
Yeah.
And like I loved him and miss him, and he's like a young kid. He was like, if I was 24, he was 25 maybe, but he changed my life.
Yeah. And you moved on from there. You went to the Northeast Conference. I mean, Northeast Conference is a one big basketball league, but just talk about like how you parlayed that. And then I guess you were the assistant, I guess.
Associate.
Associate. So the Northeast Conference, which is, I guess, like Fairleigh Dickinson, I guess St. Francis in Brooklyn, those types of schools, if I'm correct.
So it was hard for me, to be honest, because I went from a place that, as a young person, that it mattered. Even, women's basketball, soccer, and baseball were my primary sports, but I got to be involved with men's basketball. So you go to the Final Four, and then I felt I had to make a jump in my career, and I did it. I was, a scared homebody kind of kid. So getting able to stay in New Jersey was important for me. And I spent 6 years at the NEC, met so many interesting people, but it was difficult to go for an environment where you had people who cared about your program, who went to games, who were supportive, to a league where that was difficult. And to this day, as I look back and I look at my career, how many people will have corporate experience, major college athletics, legitimate mid-major to low major involvement. And then also I worked at St. Peter's as the head of public affairs for the school.
So that's a third Jersey City reference in this.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Raph and Val are going to be pumped up on this. So I've seen so many things, but the Northeast Conference was so much fun, mostly because of the joy of making an NCAA tournament, what that meant to all the teams, whether it was the soccer champion to the baseball champion, softball, basketball. It really meant something. So you got to see this wonder of March Madness from that side. Unfortunately, I wasn't there when one of the teams won. So how much amazing it would have been there to be part of FDU or at the MAC with St. Peter's. Like it would be magical for you to be a part of it.
Absolutely. Now again, just to circle back to Seton Hall, how was the impact as far as your duties expanded with the popularity, if you will, of Andrew Gaze, as far as the Australian media when the basketball team was making that run? Because again, that was something new. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, in this area, I don't think we had at that time, right? He was like the only international star, if you will, because he was, an international star, so to speak.
Yeah, no, Andrew was, and again, it's that same thing. You're in the bubble, like we're working and they're practicing. You hear PJ screaming through the doors, and practice is over, and you see them, and you're talking. So the run to the Final Four was something that was unbelievable. And for those who are around it, the moments that you remember are not so much the basketball part, it was everything else. So for example, the first games were in Tucson, and we got by the first game and then won the second game. So now there was a decision: do you stay in Arizona, come back, or stay on the West Coast? So the decision was made way above me: stay on the West Coast. So now, do you stay at the Ventana Canyon Resort or go to Denver? So we're like, stay here. This is like heaven. So what ended up happening is the people that were with the team, Mr. Walsh arranged to have a barbecue for us on in the desert, in this beautiful surrounding, no pressure, just relaxed, just us. And it was so much fun and magical. We went to a barbecue place that had tumbleweeds. Like, we were young. We didn't this was new experiences. We then go to Denver and we win. And there was one play that it's in all the highlights, but the ball never touched the ground against UNLV. Rebound, pass, all 5 players touched the ball. It never hit the ground. Layup. And there's this realization like, holy crap, we're going to the Final Four. Now, we didn't know what we were doing. To be honest, we didn't have, a strong back office, multiple people. It's not like Michigan with 400 people, 300 people in the athletic department. We had like 20. And I had to come home because there was so much stuff happening back on campus that I was responsible for stuff here while John went with the team to Seattle. Then I took the plane. I would be in Seattle having to work with Pat Scanlon at NJN would be a big example. We had to make sure that the New Jersey media had what they needed. So I remember John Morton and Ramon Ramos doing a live feed from somebody else's satellite truck outside the Kingdome that Pat patched in. And then somehow it was my job to get Ramon and John back to the team. Well, the team was on a bus supposedly at the Space Needle. So we take a cab to the Space Needle and they tell us, no, they're not here. They never came. So we had to figure out where the heck the team was, and they were at one of the shopping malls. So imagine a young guy like me. I got 2 of the famous starters, and I'm sweating bullets. And one of the funny stories that I vividly remember, during that time, one of the things we had to make sure was that there were no interviews conducted without John or myself there. So the guys wanted to go to the mall in the middle of Seattle. I don't know what it's called. And it happened to be where ESPN's set was. So all of a sudden, I look up and Gerald Green is on the ESPN set with Dick Vitale, and he's doing Seton Hall. And I'm like, I'm going to get fired. There's no way I'm surviving this. But it was one of those funny moments where we didn't know what we were doing. We were just having fun.
Yeah.
And it was incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. So just moving forward, I know you bounced around after the NEC conference. When we were in exchange, you do this sports broadcasting camp. So you could talk a little bit about that. Is that still active?
Yeah.
What was your motivation with that?
Well, I ended up after the Northeast Conference, I went to the Comcast Network, which was a startup regional sports network, call-in show type network that Comcast created as a value add for its clients. And I was, like I said, the first PR guy. And I always had this dream of like following what Jerry Eisenberg and Bill Raftery had a journalism camp years prior to that. And what I was starting to see at even back then was like there's an explosion of sports opportunities for young people. But how would they learn about it? So I had befriended Bruce Beck, who was at NBC at the time, but he was also hosting our sports show. And I talked to Bruce about we should do this camp. But I didn't know how insurance worked. I had no idea how you get an LLC. So that took 2 years of figuring it out. Then Bruce said, let's do it. And then we had this young guy, Ian Eagle, who had been after me at Syracuse. He was at CNA too. He would fill in for Bruce. He was at the Nets. I said, Ian, would you help us with it? He said, sure. So for 15 years, we ran the camp as the Bruce Beck and Ian Eagle Sports Broadcasting Camp. Bruce then decided it was a lot for him to come from Westchester and Manhattan down to Montclair. So he wanted to do it at home and then in Westchester. And then Ian said he was getting too busy because he kept adding to his resume. So he got the NBA playoffs and then I think it was a French Open. So he said, I think I'm done. So we kept it going with Chris Carino and Tim Capstraw. Okay. And unfortunately for Chris, his health had declined, so he had to step away. So now we do it with Dave Popkin, who's actually the voice of Seton Hall with Gary Cohen on the radio, and Tim Capstraw, the color commentator for the Nets on radio. He hasn't missed a game in like 30 years. And we're in our 23rd year. It's sold out. We'll be going July 15th. If people want to check into it for next year, it's sportsbroadcastingcamp.com. And we have so many kids who are doing it now professionally. We're rooting hard for Justin Antwill, one of our campers, to replace John Sterling with the Yankees. We're really hopeful for that to happen. But so many of them are doing this, and it's been amazing to be a part of it.
Now, just to clarify, what are the ages for the campers?
We go now 10 to figure 18. It's some of the kids will want to come back for their after their freshman year. But for the most part, it's going to be 10, where we have a rookie camp of 10 and 11, where we mix in traditional sports camp, like go out and play wiffle ball, spike ball, with the broadcasting, where we're at Montclair State, which has state-of-the-art studios, both TV and radio. They're on camera. We work with the Somerset Patriots, where the kids get to do play-by-play of a game. They get to do stand-ups, and we're treating it as if they're really in the business. And then they're hearing from amazing speakers like Ian, his son, Noah went to our camp. Bob Wischusen's going to come. Mike Breen did a video with us. Jason Horowitz, who does the Las Vegas Raiders, and we all love him from Westwood One with March Madness on Westwood One between games. So we've got speaker after speaker, Kim Adams on the women's side. So many great opportunities for the kids to learn and do and have fun.
Well, maybe next year you could make an exception. I'd like to send Jimmy to the camp. So
I need my personal brochure.
No, you're doing good on the research so far.
Yeah.
Although I didn't want to say anything when he started the show. If you read in between the lines, he was like not having you on right away. He was really blaming me. That's the way I took that. Like, he was riding solo, then he got me, and then so
yeah, I got to get my shots in. Never take the credit and pass along the blame.
That's it.
Yeah, very true. And now, just you have also a couple other ventures. I mean, it seems like you have a lot of irons in the fire, but you're also doing image productions and also front porch athletics. I think front porch athletics. I think that's kind of catered to. I read a little bit about that, but you just talk a little bit about front porch athletics.
Sure.
So I started that recently, right?
I ended up somehow in corporate America. I led Coldwell Banker Global Communications for 13 years. And about 8 years ago, I launched my own PR agency. I called it Modern PR, and we have regular clients, a whole bunch of them, not in sports. But one of the things that I saw during my time in corporate America was that the things that we were doing in marketing were appropriate for college athletics. But myself included, when you work in college athletics, you're in a bubble and you don't know what's out there. You don't gain an understanding of what big business, big marketing, big advertising is. And I would, throughout my 13 years, I would call my friends that are still in it and say, are you guys doing this? Are you doing this? Are you doing this? And it kept coming up, no, 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 and no. And what I realized is that it would be a difficult challenge to get the schools to understand what I'm talking about, simply because they haven't been in my shoes where I've seen how the two sides work. But what I know and what I've learned is that college sports has become a big business. This summer is proving it. In corporate America, if you were to say that your revenue was going to decrease by 20%, whether it was because of market conditions, lack of sales, or you've got to pay back lawsuit money, which they're going to have to do, and then the idea of paying players as part of the revenue model, the schools are losing money. So therefore, how do they generate that missing money? How do they cut operations where they can, programs that they offer? The hope is they don't want to lay people off. They clearly don't want to cut sports. So really, for the first time that I'm seeing, the people in college sports are starting to recognize this is a real business. There are ramifications to revenue and lack of revenue. Historically, it's been raise money, spend money. You didn't see a lot of people lose their jobs based on not hitting key measurements. So the schools, no matter what level, have got to reevaluate the way they do things. And Front Porch Athletics it's named after the famous Dean Smith quote that says athletics is just like the front porch. It may not be the most important room in the home, but it's the most visible. So if the schools can utilize athletics to drive growth and awareness for their school and also for the department, they will win. And we're doing a big focus with digital advertising and the ability to reach people who are associated with schools that you may not know about. If you're in the fundraising side, they may not buy tickets, they may not donate, but they're there. The job is to expose them to you, make them aware of you, drive them to take action and become a paying fan, donor, participant, offer internships, do NIL with athletes. there's so much that you can do, but it all comes from all the different experiences I guess I've had, and it comes together. But it is a challenge, but it's fun.
Yeah, David, listen, to me, this is, I can't say it enough. I mean, and I think we'll kind of end here. I mean, we really kind of went through your career. I mean, we appreciate, you coming on. I mean, this has been an easy conversation. I'll speak for Jimmy to have. I mean, we really went through a lot of times, personally speaking, it was really great to reflect with you. We talked about a lot of, important moments in, college sports in New Jersey. And, again, I promise you, I will finish that book. And one day when I'm seeing you on a 30 for 30, I'm going to say, hey, you know what? We interviewed that gentleman.
Yeah.
So,
and they can use this footage too. Just feel free if that's.
Yes. Yeah. Use this footage. We'll give you our consent now.
That's it. Well,
that's why Jimmy wore his new Coles shirt. So
yeah,
this
exactly.
was really fun. And you guys are the pride of Hudson County, I guess.
Yeah.
I am. Listen, Jimmy's a hardcore, Union County guy, so
yeah, okay. I'm an Elizabeth guy, but listen, thanks, David. Thanks for being patient with us. I know we had a late start today. The previous guest is, he's a little bit of a talker, so my producer had to work it out. But I appreciate you coming on. A really unique career, and like I said, the book kind of drew me in. I'm in the middle of reading it. My dad went to Seton Hall, so I kind of grew up at Seton Hall, and then it's fun reliving that team again, and really you think about the stars that are on a team and everything else, and then I think your son's also is he up at Syracuse? He was working for D1 Media Pro.
My youngest is a freshman at Penn State, and he's wants to go into sports broadcasting, and he's got it going. He's going to be calling the World Championships for the under-17 boys and girls basketball for FIBA.
Okay, I think he was really calling games for I guess D1 Media Pro, right, around basketball.
Yeah, he got to do a lot with Roselle Catholic and so much more.
That's my alma mater.
Oh, there you go. So he was with Simeon and the Jamarcus, and he loved it and really exposed them to a lot.
Yeah,
David, you just made Jimmy's summer by bringing Roselle Catholic into this show, so you might get a Christmas gift.
Yeah. Welcome to the Lions, Dan.
Yeah. Well, with that note, thanks, David, for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It was great chatting with you.
Great talking to you guys.
Dave Sturchill helped us produce this episode at his home down in Manawan, New Jersey, Chop Sports Network. Check them out. Also check his check out War at the Shore, which he has coming up on July 16th down the shore. Is going to be at Point Pleasant. And also follow us on social media. That this episode will be chopped up on social media, also put on all the platforms. But I'd like to thank Dave, and then look forward to more episodes coming up with Sports Consiglieres with Jimmy and Jerry. This is Jimmy and Jerry signing off. Thanks, Dave. I appreciate the time and the stories. It really made it easy for us. So.
Absolutely. Have a great day, everyone.